The three kindred walked through the crowded concert hall parking lot. The predatory eye of the mysterious raven bore down on them in silent judgment from on high. Eddie and Sue knew if they stayed with the kind, no kindred, not even kindred as fucked up as Sobbit, would go guns a-blazing in a crowd this big. Well, if they did, at the very least they knew that they'd keep their murder methods strictly mundane. The two nomads were without vehicle, for they crashed theirs as they entered town. Eddie assumed that they'd just steal something they liked after the concert, but with the eyes of a hound bearing down on them, they'd have to do that sooner than later. Sad, while a clanless caitiff was at the very least a somewhat recognized member of the society, even though he chose not to be a part of it, so he was not under the gun. Eddie and Sue would be hauled in to the prince in a best-case scenario, or dusted flat out in the worst case. "It's 2 against 1, unless you're with them," said Eddie to Sad. "I told you already, I'm not with anyone but myself. That's the problem." "He wouldn't walk up on both of us, would he? He's not that powerful, is he?" asked Eddie. Sad shrugged. Powerful or not, Kane didn't fuck around. When he put his sights on something, he dealt with it like a dog that wouldn't let go of a bone. Eddie's cool broke just a bit, and he even went so far as to pull on car handles to see if any of them were randomly unlocked. Sue watched as the Raven fluttered from the streetlight and down into a stingray with one of its back windows open. After a few moments, the driver's side door opened and a man emerged. It was a man with a face chiseled in stone. He was darker skinned and housed the look of a man that had indigenous blood in him. He had a crew cut with 2 long braids of hair hanging from behind his ear. On his chin was a well-defined tattoo that were 2 parallel red lines that angled down. If he had gotten that tattoo, he either had it before he was turned, or he went through the process of filling it in every night that he woke. He wore a black leather jacket with frills on the back and faded jeans that may have been older than most of the kind here. And that was saying something due to the more advanced age of the typical Smashing Pumpkins fan. He confidently beelined towards the 3 as if he had nothing to prove and 0 fucks to give. Eddie stood tall, but made mental note of just how fast the parking lot was clearing out. Kane looked to Sad with a look of brutal indifference. "You know these 2, he said, cocking his head to the strangers. Sad nodded, though he seemed to diminish and shrink under Kane's eye, like an underclassman addressing a senior. "I haven't heard anything about you 2. Who are you?" asked Kane. "I'm Rick, and that's Rita," said Eddie. Kane clicked his teeth in annoyance. Eddie wasn't sure if he instantly caught his lie or had planned on that dismissive gesture all along. He pushed back his hands and placed them on his hips. His 2 twin 6-shooters were holstered high on his chest. It was unsure if it was incidental or a show of power, but Eddie addressed it regardless of what it meant. "What is this, Dodge City, Chief?" said the nomad. Kane glared at him unamused and did not miss the subtle use of chief in his wording, unsure if that was an insult or a turn of phrase. "We'll wait here for the sheriff, and then we'll take you to the prince," said Kane. "No need to bother with that. We'll see you tomorrow night. Just tell us where you want us to be." Kane looked at Eddie with unflinching eyes, as if he weren't asking him questions and giving him options, but telling him what was going to happen. Kane pulled out his phone and began dialing. Eddie and Sue looked to each other as if they had been in situations like this before. Sue nodded to no one. The 3 kindred watched as Sue's shadow crept up behind Kane and knocked the phone from his hand. When Kane turned, there was nothing there. He looked at the 2 nomads suspiciously, but did not yet accuse them. Sue glanced in her periphery with eyes that saw even in the deepest dark. Her shadow slinked in and out of the light, looking for cars to take. Kane slowly lowered to pick up his phone, never taking his eyes from the 2 nomads. Sue noticed her shadow giving her a wave over, excitedly as if it had found something. From his crouching position, Kane attempted once again to make the phone call. Sue instinctively moved forward, as if she had done this several times before in the past. Kane's hand moved in a blur and pulled one of his twin six-shooters. It wasn't an optimal weapon to dispatch vampires, but it was good enough to use in the presence of humans until they fled the scene, and he could employ more bestial methods. Eddie dove behind a car as quickly as he could. Kane didn't bother with words. As far as he was concerned, he didn't care if these two even made it to the prince anymore. He tripped Sue expertly and pulled zip ties from his jacket. It was a temporary solution until he got out of the open and could put a stake in her. He tied her hands and feet in 5 seconds flat and left her there like a worm. Eddie stayed low and ran toward Sue's beckoning shadow. Kane was right on his heels. He wasn't certain if he noticed where the shadow went, but he definitely knew his general location. Kane flipped a badge down from the front of his leather jacket. It was real, and he had the credentials of a state trooper, which was a longer story to tell. The badge, even though it wasn't being used as intended, it gave Kane some measure of assurance that he was in the right, and whoever he was after was not. He scoured the vicinity for the wayward nomad. Eddie called to the gifts of the blood and phased himself outside the confines of perception. Kane scanned for his prey with a hawk's precision. Sad dug down next to Sue, who struggled on the ground like a fish. "Help me," Sue muttered to the youthful emo kindred. Sad stooped. "I'd love to, but you'd owe me." "I know how it works. Just do something," Sue insisted. Sad touched the plastic zip ties. The plastic withered at rapid speeds, going from a state of integrity to unstable hunks of nothing. Sue snapped her bindings and sat up. Eddie was temporarily blind to Kane's eyes, but he scrutinized his surroundings as if he saw into the realm of the otherworldly, and it was only a matter of time before he got seen. Eddie worked as quickly and quietly as he could under the hood of a red Viper. He produced a knife and began tapping wires to give the machine life. When the engine turned, Kane's eyes rubber banded his way. The hound clocked him and charged his way even before he saw him. Kane ran to the vehicle and threw everything at him, breaking the window with the butt of his pistol. Eddie threaded the needle and revived the dormant car, taking off the moment he was sprayed with glass. Kane desperately reached into the car to yank the nomad out of the window, but with the force of the car's acceleration, Kane was whipped off his feet and drug. Eddie quickly went into his jacket and stabbed into the hound's free hand. He didn't immediately let go. It wasn't until the knife slid down and tore his flesh and bone between his middle and ring finger did he not have enough grip strength to hold on. Kane tucked and rolled while meandering Kine popped up at random to watch the show. Eddie whipped the Viper back around and saw Sue running for the car, with Kane up on his feet charging at approximately an equal distance. He couldn't leave Sue even if he had to face the consequences. Suddenly, Sad interposed himself between Kane and the vehicle. It was innocuous, almost clumsy, if that was what you chose to believe. Kane and the caitiff tumbled onto the concrete while Sue got into the Viper. Kane pointed to Sad with anger, but didn't have the time to suss out if that was intentional or accidental. With ground lost by steps, Kane hopped into his car and gunned the engine.